Welcome to the Queer Confidence Podcast, the podcast to help you become your most confident queer self. I'm your host, he, she, they, Coach Alex Ray, and I haven't always been this confident. In fact, I used to be super insecure. And through this show, I want to share with you what's worked for me, my clients, and my guests so that you can become more confident. Hello, my unicorns. I am so excited to have you back for another special guest episode. Today, I have with me on the podcast, Melissa Gonzalez. She is a financial planner, and today she is going to help us figure out our finances, get things zhuzhed up, and plan for our financial futures. So welcome to the Queer Confidence Podcast, Melissa.
I love it. I love it. Thanks so much for having me, Alex. Glad to be here.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here with us.
Of course, of course.
All right, we have a lot of questions to cover, and we've got questions from the audience too. So before we get to all of the questions, I want to know a little bit more about your background, your financial upbringing, and kind of the lessons you've gone through personally.
Yeah, taking me way back now, Alex. I am born and raised in San Diego. I have three sisters. I grew up in a household filled with women, three sisters, my mom, my grandma. Even our dogs, our pets were always female. So it was very female dominant household. And we grew up in a very, I think I shared this with you, I think over coffee one time, where we talked about how I grew up in a very humble upbringing, economic upbringing, and we didn't have much. However, we had a lot of support from other people. So like the schools that we attended, my mom volunteered to help us have a private education growing up, which I really do believe played a significant role in how we grew up. And because of the area that we grew up in wasn't maybe the best area. And growing up, money was something that we just never really talked about. We kind of shied away about it. And money, if you had a lot of money, it was kind of alluded that you were maybe a bad person, or it was kind of evil to have money. So
I grew up with that same message.
Yeah. And that happens often. And it also depends on your upbringing and the culture, things like that. And for a very long time, I struggled with that growing up, that what did I not have? And then again, growing up, working really at a young age, started working at age 15, worked part of high school, worked through college, everything. And what I loved about my experience now as an adult is I love the work ethic that I built earlier on. And then the exposure I had about money to help me grow a little bit. And my grandma helped me. So I remember my grandma helped me get my first car. So she co-signed the car with me. So that was so amazing. And I was fortunate, but she trusted me. She knew my character. She knew, again, that I was working hard, good student, all that stuff. So she trusted me. So that really helped me start build my credit. Then one of my oldest sister also taught me a little bit about credit. And then that's how my passion for finance really started, was just starting to learn something that was really not talked about earlier on in life. And I realized that money is a tool. And there was things that I wanted to do to be able to help my future family and then my current family, everything. So that's a little bit about my background.
Yeah. I would love to hear a little bit more. And it sounds like you already kind of covered this a little bit, but like, what would you say to someone who has a similar upbringing where they feel like, okay, if you have money, then you're kind of evil, something's wrong with you. And now they're also like, well, how do I break through that mindset? Because I'm realizing I don't like having the lack of money either.
That's such a good question. That's something that I really personally was very challenged with for a very long time. That when I realized that money is a tool, and that money does not make anyone a good person, does not make anyone a bad person. It's just a transfer of energy. That's the way I look at money now. And I look at, again, if it's a tool, what does it provide you? And of course, if you're inside, if you're a good person, you're a good person. Like,
Yeah.
so I can't say that it's something that someone can just develop overnight and say that they're maybe the lack mentality turns into an abundance mentality, but it's doing affirmations, the positive affirmation statements to yourself, and then learning about all the good things that money can do in someone's life, first in your own household, how it can really help provide the life that you really want. Does not have to be at all something that's like a lavish lifestyle. But and again, sometimes I think we automatically believe that money equals lavish lifestyle, and that's
Right.
not the case. So it's like whatever's important to you, then dig a little deeper into it, focus on positivity, and then little by little let go about all the many things that maybe we were taught earlier on in life about how money is bad. We end up identifying that those things aren't true.
Mm.
But it takes a while to figure that out.
There's like this religion to money almost.
Yeah. Yeah.
And these like spooky boogeyman stories we believe about money, but they really do. I mean, I wish they sounded that silly in my head, but oftentimes they don't. They seem very real and very true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally. Totally.
Is there anything else that we should know that you'd like to share so that we can get to know you a little bit more in your background?
Yeah, so I'm part of the community as well. So I came out when I was in my early 20s. I'm married to my beautiful wife, Maricela, who you've met. We have a lot of furry children. We have 2 cats, 2 dogs. We're very family oriented. And
Mm.
one thing that's been very important for me as I continue my career is really helping diverse professionals. And that
Mm.
includes LGBTQ plus community. And I'm just so happy that I have this opportunity to just help so many people in this space. And I like the way I like kind of saying like I'm helping my people, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's LGBTQ plus or it's diverse families or individuals.
Yeah.
I'm really happy about that.
Oh, that's amazing. I feel like there's so much trust that you build too by just having shared identities
Mm-hmm.
with people. Like, I would so much rather work with someone in the community than I would someone outside the community that doesn't necessarily understand my struggles, or that like I might have to experience awkward microaggressions just by like having a conversation that in my head isn't supposed to go
Yeah.
there, but somehow does.
Yeah, somehow it does. And I've received that feedback before from clients. Either I'm meeting them for the first time and they say that I saw your website or I saw your LinkedIn, and they say that they like the I often get like the authenticity, and that I'm very forward, that I am welcoming these communities to our practice, versus saying that maybe sometimes financial planners, financial advisors have a very niche market where they only help a certain type of individual. And that's something that just I never felt really good about that
Mm.
starting this business. And I always just wanted to really help those that I saw that needed a little bit more. Maybe they were underserved, underhelped,
Yeah.
underrepresented.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I would love to hear too, if you're willing to share, whatever you're willing to share, just about your coming out journey. What was
Mhm.
that like for you?
Such a good question. Okay, so it was in my early 20s. So I'm one of four girls, so 3 sisters. And I one day I decided to actually tell one of my sisters.
Hmm.
And I remember I think it was one bathroom for the entire house, and we were in the bathroom together. She's probably like doing her makeup or something. And then I tell her, and her response was kind of like, duh, like I knew this already. I'm like, oh geez.
Really?
Yeah. It was funny. It was funny. So I told one sister, then told another person, then another person. I eventually told my grandma. And my grandma was the one that I was most concerned about. Like, I'm not sure. Very she's born in Mexico, became a US citizen in the States maybe 30 years ago, maybe I might be off at the time, and had a very strict way of looking at things. And
Yeah.
I thought that that was going to be very challenging. And she was so accepting.
Mm.
I'm very, very blessed with my coming out story. Very, very blessed, fortunate about all the support that I had from family. And we joke about it that a lot of folks say that we knew this already. We were just waiting for you to, like, we were waiting for you to say it. So it
Yeah.
was like, wait, why didn't you tell me? They're like, that's your story to tell. Like, okay, that makes total sense.
I love that. I'm so glad for you that you had such supportive family there for you. That's absolutely incredible. And I think that's not always like the narrative that we hear about our community. And I love to be able to hear different stories so that we can really show like, hey, not everyone's experience is terrible.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
can be very good and connecting. Would you say your relationship, how did your relationship like with your family change after coming out?
I don't think it changed much. I think it was kind of like you said that one of your family members was like, okay, like let's move on now. It's not a big deal.
Oh,
I think that's the majority of my relationships were like that. And that everybody was just supportive. And then it's like the end is like, it's still me. I'm still the
mm,
same person, I'm still the same human, the same relationship. Yeah. So I'm very, very, very fortunate because I know that that's not the case for a lot of people. And yeah, I'm just thinking like, when did I maybe not have those experiences? I could say professionally sometimes in my
mm,
earlier career, I was, it was at times very challenging to be in a professional environment. And then I constantly am asked, what does your husband do? Or what does your boyfriend do? And then those comments,
mm-hmm.
or I'm also Hispanic, so I speak Spanish. So in my previous career, sometimes I would speak Spanish because of the client that I had in front of me. And I'd get feedback on that, like, hey, you're in the United States, so you should speak English, or the like those types of comments. So I received a lot.
God.
I received
Yeah.
that. I received some stuff about being a lesbian,
Mm.
and I got a lot of the "you're too pretty for that. You're too like yo, you haven't been with them. You haven't been with the right man." So it's just like I got a
Oh
lot of
my.
in the professional environment. So more personally, not so much. It was professionally that I had to figure out how to navigate through it. So now I'm very forward about who I am in my
Mm.
meetings. It's just part of the conversation. Like if someone says something about their spouse, then I'd say, "Oh, like my wife and I." So I just mention it,
Yeah.
make it a part of the conversation. And if whatever reason they don't like it, then I know that we're not the right fit together. Like, and that's perfect. So
I
I'm
feel
very
like
forward.
the plan for today was to focus on financial confidence. However, I feel like you just gave everyone just such a great tool right there for confidence just in your identity as a queer person.
Yeah.
Mo- I have found like this similar things where the more that I hit it in the past, the more insecure I felt, and the more forward I was about it, the more confident I felt. And the same thing I see in my clients as well. Like it's when you hide it, then you have all the opportunity for people to be like unintentionally an asshole to you. But when
Mm-hmm.
you lead with it, you can find out very quickly
Mm-hmm.
where they stand and say goodbye
Yeah.
if they're not a good fit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's an abundance, right?
Yeah.
It's an abundance. I always say like people are choosing to work with me and my team, but I'm also
Mm.
choosing who to onboard
Yeah.
to as a
Yeah.
client. And we look for shared values. We look for
Mm.
that's very important. You can have all the money in the world, but if you're not a nice person, we probably don't want you as a client. And again, that's just more of like just about we're a value driven practice
Yeah.
on how we're helping people. But being forward, it's on LinkedIn website. on the Zoom or any other call it virtual tools that anyone uses. I always use my pronouns, on my email signature. Goal is just to make it very apparent, and that it's also a safe space
Yeah.
too. That typically opens a door where someone else might feel a little bit more comfortable sharing some more personal information with me than maybe if I didn't have that.
Amazing. Okay. Shall we get into like the finance stuff? Let's give everyone the full like financial overhaul today.
Let's go.
Give them a starting place. I know what the question was that I was forgetting earlier.
Yeah.
And I think this is like a great spot to kick things off here. I, for a long time, and it's a reoccurring thing, I just finally redid my budget after hiding from it since almost a year.
Oh.
And I had one for a little bit before, and I go in and out. One of the things that reoccurs for me is I have a lot of fear of looking at my finances. I have this mindset, and I'm sure there are other people listening that maybe have something too, so I want to hear your input on it, of, well, if I just close my eyes, it's probably going to be okay. So why look at it? Because if I look at it, it's just pure anxiety.
That's such a good question. And absolutely, you're not alone. That's so common. So common. So one, I like that you have I like that you've created a budget, and it's so hard to stick to a budget sometimes. I think it's just human nature that we don't want to, right? I love that you did it. And then I think it's like, so I think of like any type of goal, whether it's a career goal, a financial goal, or maybe it's maybe it's any other goals in life. A lot of times we put this goal out there, and normally what gets tracked gets done. Right? So if we do pay attention to, again, maybe looking at that budget, right? We have to start, if we're not paying attention to that, like, let's start asking ourselves, what's holding us back? What is causing this fear? And understand what that root cause is. And what happens is a lot of times we're in this lack mentality that we're thinking of what we don't have versus we're so grateful that we do have XYZ. So I'm thinking of, again, whether someone has a job, right, where they're getting paid every 2 weeks or every month, however they get paid, or someone's self-employed, however you're getting paid, someone is still trusting you to pay you. So it's like receiving. I always look at it, it's like you're always providing something, wherever it is that you work or self-employed, you're providing a value somehow, and you're getting paid for that. So I think focusing on what's really positive about it versus the lack. And I think it's so hard to, it's easier said than done, right? But so I think one is like acknowledging that piece is what's causing the fear, and maybe digging into it a little bit more. And then the other one is having some type of goal, or a goal in place about what we're paying, right? Whether we're looking at our expenses for, maybe it's just to put money into a savings, or maybe to pay some bills, maybe it's to pay some credit cards, whatever it is. It's that if we don't feel like we're making progress, a lot of times we just naturally, human behavior is to avoid it. So I'd say having some type of target a lot of times helps alleviate it, because there's a target and then there's some level of a plan associated with how am I going to save this money, or pay this bill, or pay this card off. Like if there's a plan, then you have like the end in sight, then we start seeing it differently.
Yeah.
I don't know, kind of rambled there, but that's kind of how I'm taking that one.
I love that answer. And when I think about it for myself, I used to work out, like that was my main thing. A lot of people that follow me still know me from the fitness world. What you said about tracking really reminded me of how I used to really track, my deadlift, my snatch, which is not anything naughty. It's a CrossFit move. It's Not anything naughty here. I mean, we do talk naughty on the podcast, so we can definitely talk about that. But deadlifts, squats, like all of the different movements, like I would track, what was my lift,
Mm,
and would over time watch that number grow, and I was intentional about trying to like get stronger, and
mm,
I did. And I think the same thing, if I never even knew what was on the barbell, and if I never actually like wrote it down or looked back, I also wouldn't have had any of the satisfaction of, oh, look, I actually lifted more this week than I did a month or two ago.
mm.
I think applying some of that same mentality for me
Yep,
is a really great framework for finances.
that's so good.
Oh,
So good.
so thank you for that.
That's
Okay, next question I have for you is how is the financial challenges or financial planning challenges that queer folks need to plan for? How are those different?
that's a good one. So I think one, budgeting absolutely is a big topic. The other one is estate planning. So
Mm,
estate planning, that's a big one because it also depends on what state you live in, whether you're in California or you're in a different state. So I think of estate planning because there are added components that make it a little bit more challenging for same-sex couples.
hmm
So for our community, so that would include having a will or a trust or having the right beneficiaries in place, healthcare directives. Like I've heard the stories from clients and like from other areas that something happened with their partner, but they don't have rights to go visit them at a hospital. They don't have
mm,
rights to help financially, to have access to bank accounts to help pay bills because they're not on an account, but there's no power of attorney. So there's these nuances if for our community. So that's one. And then also just every state is different. So I think of like even adoption.
hmm
So in some states, you don't have like one person doesn't, if again, assuming same-sex couple, they don't have to adopt the child. But in another state, if the adoption, if one parent is not legally a parent, there can be some issues there legally.
mm,
If the let's just assume child goes to a field trip to a different state and then something happens that wasn't supposed to happen,
hmm
there might be some issues there. So estate planning is huge in our community. I can say it's
yeah.
often overlooked, but really important to address important to address that. And then you asked like some other, like I think it was like nuances or other challenges that LGBTQ plus individuals, families face. Also, just the family, like growing a family, if that's important, right?
hmm
To the individual, to the couple. It's not like I'll give myself as an example. My wife, her name is Maricela. It's not like Marisa and I can wake up one day and say like, "Hey, let's make a baby tonight." Like we just can't
Right.
do that. Like we just can't, right?
There's a
It's
little
not.
more planning involved.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
like it's just not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So we really have to plan it. Then it's the who are we going to contact? Who are we going to trust? Who has experience working with same-sex couples?
Mm,
Then it's how much is this going to cost? Then it's the insurance. Does some employers have really great coverages in this space? Some employers don't.
mm-hmm.
Then there's the also like thinking about maternity leave, right? If you're not married, can you both take maternity leave? Like, how does that work? So all these little nuances, but that can really affect someone's life
Mm-hmm.
financially. And then what is another one? I'd say an emergency fund, safety, like a safety net. LGBTQ plus individuals are recommended to have a higher emergency fund than our heterosexual counterparts.
Sure.
And one reason is because there's a higher probability that we would experience some type of workplace harassment. So then we have a higher probability of being out of work. And then meaning, and then statistically, we have more debt. So there's just like this cycle. So it's like having those strong safety nets is really can play a significant role long term, short term or long term.
Yeah. That's really good to think about. Like all of those things, particularly the one standing out to me is like having that bigger safety net and knowing like, oh, okay, hey, it's important for us to have a larger safety net than we might be if we're not seeking out queer centered queer centered advice on our finances. We may not be aware of these nuances.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Are there any things we talked about challenges a bit? Are there any strengths that you see in queer individuals and their finances?
Absolutely. Yes. So that's a good one. Our queer community have a very strong buying power in the United States. Very strong buying power in the United States. And household incomes are higher typically than the heterosexual incomes. When you combine a household, I'm sure there's like age ranges to this, and I don't have the exact data there, but it's pretty neat to hear that the data stating that LGBTQ plus are one of the segments of folks that are increasing their buying power in the US. It's like okay, we have we're dropping some money in our in our community, in businesses, all of that.
I feel like that's something that to me feels very empowering to know that like, hey, look, we've got corporations, businesses want our money. When I think about it from that side of like, oh, they want what I have, I always feel a lot more empowered. Like, well, great, then I'm going to make some wise decisions because I'm not the one that's like begging here. Like, you want what I have, and I don't have to just kind of like grovel.
Yeah.
for it.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's so true, though. It's so true. We're important buyers in our community, whether it's local space, national space, and it's probably why we're also seeing a lot of, amongst other things, but we're seeing a lot of companies really focus on capturing this business, and really helping our community. So
definitely, and I think that's sort of a way that we can all start thinking about. Okay, well, then how do we leverage this in our workspaces? Or if you're wanting to purchase something, like how do you use that again to your advantage instead of feeling like, oh, something I have to hide this part of me? Can that be something that's at the forefront that's actually like your identity being an ally for you instead of feeling like your identity is a hindrance for you in that realm?
Exactly.
Do you have any like top tips for the community for planning for a better financial future?
Really good question. So top tips. So one is, I think the first one always is start with the budget, is understanding what's coming in every month, what has to come out every month. A good rule of thumb is 60% of expenses 60% of income goes towards expenses, like your normal day-to-day. 20% goes towards your future self. Always recommend to look at saving or investing, putting money away as a bill. It's like you're going to pay your rent or you're going to pay your mortgage. Pay yourself too. And then the last 20% goes to whatever you want to spend on. Like whatever you want, guilt-free. So you're giving yourself permission to spend. So that's one. As your income increases, I always recommend to increase your savings or investments to like what you're contributing. It's so easy for us to increase our lifestyle spending. So it's like, how do we do both? So I always like operate in percentages. So budgeting, that's one. The other one is start having a conversation with a planner, with an advisor. Start having a conversation, develop a financial plan regardless of what stage in life you're in, is understand what are those short-term and long-term goals you want in life. And they're always change. Like they always change. So it's okay that we don't have like the perfect, like we don't know exactly what we want in 5 years or in 10 years or in 20 years. That's okay. There's no right or wrong answer. And then just to start somewhere. Always recommend to do things to make sure that they're setting themselves with a very strong foundation. I like to use the analogy of a financial house. When you purchase a house, you're always going to double check if the foundation of that house is really strong. So from a financial planning perspective, let's make sure that you have a very strong foundation. So talk to a financial advisor, have that conversation, get to build a relationship, and then little by little, you'll see the progress. That's one thing that I wish I had done sooner, even for myself. Marisela, my wife, says the same thing, that she wishes she had done things sooner too. We don't know what we don't know, right? But then we learn.
Yeah.
And it's like okay, let's just keep on going. There's progress.
Yeah. Okay, so potential roadblock I'm seeing here is, what about the person that's like, okay, that all sounds great, but like I'm panicked because my finances are so tight. How much is it going to cost me to talk with an advisor? How can I even afford to be able to do that?
Yeah, that's so true. And I can see that those come up. So it depends. So there are folks that really focus primarily on more like budgeting. There's you probably would pay some type of fee, probably a few $100s a month, to speak to someone that is only going to really focus on budgeting.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's a great first way. But yes, you're probably looking at a few $100s of an investment in there per month. For a financial planner, financial advisor, some charge a flat fee just to have conversations as well. Some don't. Personally, I've operated my business of not charging that upfront fee. So it's really just a conversation. There is no charge to have the meetings, to have the conversations. We just ask to share the love of financial planning, right? Because instead of putting thousands of dollars into marketing, we'd say, well, we want to just serve our community. And the way we grow is through word of mouth, through favorable introductions, all of that. So there are advisors out there, myself included, that will not charge that upfront fee, which can be several thousands of dollars most times.
Amazing. So someone listening right now with that exact situation could say, okay, great. I'm gonna call up Melissa after this interview and be like, excuse me, I need some help. Where do I get started?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You'd be able to get them started.
Yeah, absolutely. We would spend some time, have that conversation, direct the right way, kind of give some suggestions on what to do, some tools as well. Like we've helped some people where we give them some guidelines, some tools as to what they need to do to get out of some debt, to build a strong emergency fund. And then we pretty much say, this is kind of like the homework over the next 3 months or 6 months or a year. And again, they're adults. They're responsible for implementing all of that. And then after that, then it's Melissa, we did it. We're done. We're almost done. Now it's okay, let's focus on some longer term planning versus solely paying off debt. And again, debt was just an example, but we've done that several times.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay. Cool. So looping back to something that we talked about earlier, I want to shift the conversation more towards families for a bit.
Yeah.
For queer families, what should they keep in mind as far as navigating estate planning or insurance or other things that are unique to queer families?
For queer families, so estate planning is absolutely obtain a trust. Absolutely a trust if you have assets to protect and pass down to each other, and making sure that beneficiaries are up to date. Because again, some states are just not going to honor that. Again, they're not going to honor if someone's not married, and sometimes they will. But again, every state is different. So having a trust, and updating beneficiaries. For insurance, I highly encourage folks to be proactive about life insurance, be proactive about protecting their income. Our ability to earn an income is what pays the bills, what helps us save money and everything. And that's a big area that's missed. And there can be times where we just can't go to work, and that can be very detrimental to the debt that we just paid off, the savings account that we just built, and now we can't go to work for 6 months for XYZ reason. So those are at least a little bit on the insurance side. Longer term for insurance, it would be long-term care.
Mm-hmm.
Planning, long-term care for my queer clients, their concern tends to be, and even for myself too, their concern tends to be, how much is this going to cost? Who's going to take care of me when I get older if I don't have kids?
Right.
Because a lot of times what happens is kids become the plan. That's very common. And the state doesn't pay for this stuff, or the government doesn't pay for this stuff. So then if we don't have kids, then who's left? So we really have to self-fund and proactively plan for this. But there is a way to have an insurance company kind of pay that bill for you. So
love that. I feel like that's like right there. The answer I wanted to hear was like, okay, wait a minute, hold on. How much?
Yeah,
Are you sure
God.
no one else is going to help with this? Because I pay so much goddamn money in taxes and insurances. Like, are you sure?
Yeah, that one's a tough one. That one's a tough one because unfortunately, it's very expensive process to go through long-term care. Southern California, on the low end, it's about $5,000 a month in today's dollars.
Right.
Just to pay for that.
Yep.
And that's not for the best care. And that rate is skyrocketing year over year. So we could imagine when you and I are well, a little bit older, we're probably going to still be super healthy, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. Hopefully independent living.
Yeah.
But as you said, that's not always guaranteed. And it's like a lot of financial planning is to like kind of help with that thing. The fact that life isn't 100% guaranteed.
Right.
Preparing for those unexpected things.
Right. It's exactly, prepare for the unexpected, but plan for a really good tomorrow, and then figure out how do you still plan for those things, but still have an amazing life today versus saying I'm working to only plan for tomorrow. That's not, most people want to have a very balanced life that they're enjoying today, but they're planning for a good tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. What could someone do then to start connecting with a financial advisor or finding more information?
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned it earlier that I absolutely am happy to help. I'm happy to help. So they're more than welcome to reach out through my website. There's a way to just kind of like fill out a little questionnaire, and then it'll send me a link or a note to contact and then schedule a time together. So that's going to be one way. Then of course I'm on LinkedIn and Instagram, all those good social media channels. They can reach out to me.
Yeah. One of the reasons I really wanted to have you was so that anyone that's listening that's like, hey, I really want to start working on my financial picture, but most financial advice out there doesn't feel like it includes me or even is aware of what are the things that I need to look out for as someone in the LGBTQ plus community. So absolutely, y'all get yourself connected with Melissa. She's going to actually understand the challenges, the unique challenges that you're going to face that you have thought of or that you may not have thought of at all. So I really appreciate that about you and your expertise.
Thanks, Alex.
Yeah. Let's do 2 questions from the audience. So Dr. Gretchen Seitz, I hope I'm saying your last name correctly. She asks, is it possible to generate wealth without investing in real estate?
Really good question. And the answer is absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. So there is no right or wrong way on how to build wealth or generational wealth. I do believe social media has taught a lot of us that the only way to do it is through real estate.
Right.
right? I think that's very common. I think that is a way to do it, but not the only way to do it. The best way to approach it from a planning perspective is to diversify assets and have different ways, different wealth building tools. Have to think about, yes, real estate is is a great tool. However, has its downsides.
Hmm.
Or in some investment accounts are great tools, but they have some downsides. So there's everything's going to have a pro and have a con. There's no unicorn product out there that's going to be perfect, but it is what feels right to you as a person versus doing something that maybe just doesn't feel right. Like not everybody wants to be a property manager and be a landlord.
Right.
Not everybody, right? But I think I think our society has made a lot of people believe that that's the only way to build wealth, and that's absolutely not true. Best way to look at it is based on habits. So what's the percentage of income that we're actually putting away, and that's growing, right?
Mm.
So it's in certain like savings, investment accounts, and or real estate, but the percentage of our incomes, that we're actually putting away, that's what's going to grow over time. Right.
Oh,
If we're not putting anything away, that makes it very challenging.
right.
Yeah.
That nothing's growing because it's not
Nothing's
there.
right. Yeah.
That on it right there, that's something that I really appreciated the first time that we hung out and got coffee and like talked
Yeah.
was just that you really center the how on values.
Mm-hmm.
I felt really comfortable talking with you and understanding that, like, okay, wait a minute. You're not someone that's going to come with a plan of, okay, well, here's the step 1 through 7. You have to do all of these. And if you don't like them, then, get over it. Or, or sorry, you're just hopeless. You're never going to be able to have the financial future you want. And that is kind of the way that I felt like I was being talked to in other financial settings was like, you have to do these specific things. And if you don't, you cannot succeed financially. Or even that there's something almost like wrong with you if you don't like this. And some of us have like certain moral obligations with certain ways of investing our finances. And I think that's probably maybe more common in the queer community than it is outside the community for us to be more aware of where we're putting our money and being a little more conscious of, I don't want just growth. I also want to be doing good with how I invest my money.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's so common. That is very, very common. The social responsible investing, that is something that is more talked about now, and it's important.
Yeah.
People want to align their values to what they're putting their money towards, like, or even what stores they go to.
Mm-hmm.
Where are they going to? What business are they going to pay into for products or services? We look at like the HRC scores. We look at a lot, like to make sure that they're in alignment.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Absolutely. All right. The second question I have is from Mario. And he said, are there expenses unique to the LGBTQ community that we should plan for?
Good question. I think I touched on one or a little earlier on the long-term care planning. I think that one for sure, not a huge concern as a younger individual, but as we get older, it's something that would play a role. So that's going to be one. And the other one is really paying attention to employer benefits. What are the benefits that you have access to if you're looking to transition? Is that covered through work, right? Or what part of it is covered, what part of it is not? Or if we're looking to expand the family, start a family, does your employer offer some help or not? So I think a lot of it is employer based. I think those are the two main ones that at least pop up to mind right now.
Yeah, those are great. All right. Lastly, give us a little preview of what they can expect if they reach out to you. What does it look like to work with you?
So typically we would have an introductory conversation, and it's a conversation just to understand what's important, what the goals are of that individual, that family, or that couple, whoever it is, understand their current story as to where they're at financially, how they got there, all that, and then understand what they're not doing.
Hmm.
I ask a lot of questions, just to understand the story. Um, and I can say it's a judgment free zone. So, again, no right or wrong answers. It's just really understanding what the current scenario is and where you're headed, or the individual's headed. And then, assuming we agree on having another conversation, typically we would have another meeting. And that's when I would share a little bit more of those observations of this is what, like, steps to take or strategies to do. And then at that point, we can say, okay, should we actually formalize this relationship and really work together? Should we follow up in a few months, or like, should we reconnect in another week, or is it another 6 months? Whatever it is, we can figure out cadence at that point. But the first conversation, I can say it's just an open conversation where we're figuring out, again, can we be of value and help in any way, shape, or form? Or maybe is it not, maybe is we're going to give a couple of pieces of advice and say, let's connect again in 6 months. So again, I'd say it's a very simple conversation. The most I say to be prepared for is have a budget, and I would share like a blank budget to complete pre-fill prior to the conversation, so that we can focus on that.
Okay. Love it. All right. Where can they find you? How can people work with you? And who can work with you?
Absolutely. Great. So a few places to find me. So one is on my website. So that is melissagonzalez.nm.com. So that's one. Then of course there's Instagram, and then there's a LinkedIn. But the best places to get in contact, at least to schedule, would be my website or LinkedIn are the best places for scheduling. But Instagram, absolutely send me a message, and then we can always schedule.
Awesome. And I'll have all that linked up in the show notes for you. And you work with anyone in the US, right?
Yes,
Yep.
yes. So we have access to clients all over the US. We're right now licensed in, I might be off at maybe 28, 29 different states.
Okay.
So if for whatever reason I'm not licensed in that specific state, then absolutely just get licensed super quickly. So that's pretty simple.
Okay.
As
Awesome.
long as in the US. Yeah.
All right. I love it. All right. Lastly, I want to just note everyone, go to the show notes. You don't even have to remember those links. Everything will be down in the show notes for you, so you can easily connect with Melissa. And if you want to be able to ask questions on future episodes, make sure that you visit the link in the show notes to get involved in the Instagram channel. Once you're in there, you'll be able to ask questions for future guests. All right. Any final words of wisdom, advice, confidence, love that you want to share with us, Melissa?
Oh, you're so sweet. Well, one, thank you for having me. This was awesome.
You're so welcome.
Absolutely. And I say this, it's everybody's financial journey is different. So a piece of advice is focus on yourself, on your individual finances, and not compare life to someone else. It's so easy to play the comparison game. And I think as long as we focus on just our daily habits, improving little by little, we will go far. You'll go far financially. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just your path. It's whatever, kind of wherever you want to go. That's where you'll go. But
Amazing. I think that that comparison mentality is so difficult to get out of. So thank you for the reminder, because it makes such a big difference. And we do realize that, oh, okay, that's what's happening, and put that aside. There's so much more. I think our financial pictures can look so much more hopeful and exciting when we're not comparing to anyone else.
Exactly.
So
Exactly. It's your journey. You're an individual. Yep.
yeah. Melissa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and sharing all of your wisdom with us. I really appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. You're so sweet. Thanks, Alex.
You're welcome. All right, everyone. I'll see you on the next episode. Bye. If you enjoyed this episode, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend so they too can become more confident. You can also help more people find the show by leaving a 5-star review wherever you listen. And if you want to become a more confident queer with support from yours truly, head to coachalexray.com or use the link down in the show notes. I'm looking forward to working with you.